Welcome back to the evolution of horror. My name is Mike, and as ever, I am your host. If you're tuning in for the first time, then welcome. Usually, although not for a while, we explore and dissect the evolution of the horror genre by looking at particular subgenres across several weeks. In January 2019, we will begin our new journey through the evolution of the zombie film. So that will be starting very soon. But this week, we are bringing you our end of year special, our 2018 review. We're going to talk about some of our highlights, some of our favourite movies, our scariest movies, our most fucked up movies, our favourite kill scene, our favourite gore scene, our creepiest moment, our best performance, our most overrated movie, our most underrated movie. We're going to cover all the bases this week. And not only that, throughout the episode, you will also be hearing from some of my other co-hosts and guests who have joined me throughout the year, who sent me voice messages telling me what their personal favourite horror movie of 2018 was. So we've got loads of exciting stuff to bring you this week. So joining me for the end of year 2018 review, one of my favourite people to have on the podcast. She was here a few weeks ago discussing Suspiria with me. She's a co-host on the BFI podcast and makes up one half of the fabulous film collective known as The Final Girls. It is my great pleasure to welcome back Anna Bogutskaya. Anna, hello.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm slightly fragile.
You are a little bit fragile today, but I'm really impressed that you have cracked open a beer with me. That's hardcore. Amazing.
It's what needs to be done.
It is like it's this time of year, isn't it? It's a very full-on time of year.
It's the festive spirit.
It really is. We're in the festive spirit. Actually, the last time we podcasted together was, I think, the BFI podcast where we talked about Halloween.
True.
Actually, that morning I was very fragile as well, and
but then we're keeping on brand.
We're keeping on brand. And when I listened back to it, I was like, my voice sounds really, I'm like, voice sounded extra croaky that morning. But yeah, so we're keeping up with the tradition. It's good. So we're going to rattle through loads of chat about the films of this year. First of all, in general, do you think it's been like a good year? Has it been a strong year for horror, would you say?
I know there's been a few pieces going around saying that 2018 has not been a great year for horror.
Vogue.
I would not agree.
Yes.
Just because this is the year that gave us Hereditary, so everybody needs to just shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Spoiler alert for your list.
My list of one film. When I was looking through the films that have been released this year or have been doing the festival rounds, have premiered at festivals this year, there's been some amazing stuff.
Incredible stuff at festivals.
Really, really amazing stuff. Not all of it has necessarily hit UK cinemas at all or yet. Maybe it's coming in early 2019. But I've been really, really amazed by some of the horror stuff that I've seen.
Yeah.
Not necessarily some of the reboots or remakes or follow-ups, but actually for originally scripted horror films.
Totally.
Which makes me so much more optimistic for the state of horror cinema in general and stuff that's about to come, because it's not about kind of what makes the most money or the big franchises and how they land or how they expand themselves. It's about these new stories or stories that are revisiting traditional tropes or traditional kind of horror archetypes that I've been really excited about.
Mother, father, what's afoot? Only possum black as soot. Mother, father, where to tread? Far from possum and his head.
I think it's the same with any year, isn't it? You get the mix, you get the kind of small indie gems, you get some of the bigger, more mainstream movies, which may not actually be as good. It's interesting, I read that Vogue article about how it's been a bad year for horror, and it's ridiculous, really. I think, like you say, any year that gives us movies like Hereditary, Climax, The Endless is a good year. Whether or not it was better than, for example, 2017, where we got Get Out, It Comes at Night, Gerald's Game, It, Happy Death Day, Mother, Creep 2, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, Veronica, Tragedy Girls, and a few others. I don't know whether or not it's been on par with previous years. I'm not sure. I guess that's what we're going to get into when we discuss it. But it has been a strong year overall. I mean, like you say, there's movies like Hereditary, which absolutely smashed it. We've got these incredible kind of acclaimed directors taking on horror and genre movies this year. So we had Gaspar Noé's Climax, we had Lars von Trier's The House That Jack Built. We had Steven Soderbergh's Unsane, Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria. We had Panos Cosmatos' Mandy, and we had Gareth Evans' Apostle. And then we had some of the kind of classic fan favourites and bigger franchise entries. So we had The First Purge, The Strangers 2, Slender Man, The Predator, Unfriended, Dark Web. We had a Puppet Master movie. We had Insidious, The Last Key. We had Hellraiser, Judgment, and of course we had Halloween. Then we had these kind of little smaller indie gems, you know, slightly lesser known ones that may have popped up on a few cinema screens or on Netflix, which all I thought were really interesting in different ways. So The Endless, Cam, Ghost Stories, The Witch in the Window, Upgrade, Assassination Nation, Incident in a Ghostland. So I think just overall, I would say the quality's been pretty fantastic. I just think sometimes, as with all horror films, you need to know where to look. You need to look out for recommendations. You can't just go for the movies that have the biggest box office or the best trailers.
Does he seek or does he hide? Can you spy him deep within? Little possum, black as sin.
Hi Mike, this is Adam from the Book of Darkness and Light. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast this year. It's been such a lot of fun to do those episodes with you. My favourite horror film of 2018, I'm afraid it's a tie between Possum and Hereditary. I've chosen Possum because of its strange, lurking, creepy, uncanny menace and its bleak British landscapes and that evocative harking back to the old BBC ghost story films and the public information films of the 70s and 80s. I've chosen Hereditary because, well, it remains the scariest cinematic experience I've ever had. Hoping for something to come along in 2019 and take that title. Merry Christmas, season's greetings, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in 2019.
I thought rather than just go through our sort of top 10 or something like that, because I was like, we may end up just with all the same films. I imagine we both would probably have the same number one, the same favourite, that kind of thing. So instead, we've split it into categories. We've got some like more kind of classic categories, and we've got some sillier categories, and we're just going to run through and discuss our choices. Was this difficult for you, coming up with your choices and answers for all these categories?
It was very difficult.
Yeah.
It was quite difficult because all I wanted to do is put Hereditary in every single place.
And I did email you and I was like, can we try and not name, like, not say the same film more than maybe 3 or 4 times, basically, for this?
I did my best for you, Mike.
You did well.
My best.
You did well. Because I think, let's take it as read that most of the categories we would put Hereditary as
every single category. Best creepy kid.
And if you want to, and you can listen to an earlier episode earlier this year of me and Anna talking about Hereditary anyway. So we've done that conversation already. Amazing. So a few little categories to kick things off, kind of early sort of pre-production type categories I'm going to ask you. So what was, coming into 2018, your most anticipated horror movie, the one you were most excited about based on press, marketing, trailers, that kind of thing?
So I'd say there would be 2. Based on just general hype and anticipation would be Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria, because that was a long time coming, and the type of people involved and Luca himself were just too exciting to ignore. So the hype around that was massive. And then the film that came out of nowhere that I just saw the trailer for and instantly became obsessed and hounded it down until I finally got to see it was Hereditary. Yeah. Just entirely based on the trailer.
Well, yes, totally. The marketing for Hereditary was really interesting because we didn't really know what it was based on the trailer. There was that weird, that shot with the kind of doll's house and all of that kind of stuff. And you're like, what the fuck is this? It just looked really interesting, didn't it?
Looked really interesting. Looked like it was going to be batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And it didn't really tell you anything about the film, which I think is the mark of a good trailer.
The best type of trailer. And actually, my choice is pretty much the same as yours. I've gone with Suspiria for me. And that was partly because I wasn't that excited about it initially, because I wasn't a massive fan of the original. But then when I saw that, I loved the trailer. The trailer was really well cut, and it had some of that Tom York music. And again, it didn't really give much away, but all it gave you with this kind of this look and tone, and we talked about it when we discussed that film, but the way it looks a little bit more like kind of German cinema, or it had a bit of possession to it, and like those types of movies, didn't it? Much more than it looked like a Dario Argento film or something. So I remember that probably being the trailer that got me most excited in 2018. I was like, this looks awesome. What about your favourite poster? What movie had the best poster for you this year?
Okay, so this was difficult because I actually didn't really like a lot of the posters that were out. So I was looking at some of them from this year. I was like, none of them really do it for me graphically. I was massively disappointed in the Suspiria poster.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, there is one version though. I don't think it was the quad that was used in the UK, but there is one version where it's just a woman. I think it's Tilda with kind of a long flowing dark hair, kind of on the dance floor. And I thought it was very minimal and quite beautiful.
Yes.
But I think that's either an early version, maybe an American version somewhere. It's been kind of floating around the internet. But it's not the official one, so it doesn't really count.
What actually is the official one? Is it just the one with just the words, Suspiria, like in the big letters?
Big letters, with the kind of spraying of blood or red or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would say, having looked at them again, it would probably be Climax. I really like, I think it especially works with the UK format, so the quad. Because you just get this big mess of people.
Yes.
And you don't really know whether they're dancing, whether it's like some sort of orgy, whether they're all dead, whether someone's the killer. So it's just this like beautiful mess of people all in this poster, and with the really kind of glittery gold kind of graphics for the actual name of the film, Climax. So I thought that would be my favorite.
Yeah, it's really cool. I remember when I saw the poster before I knew anything about the film, I thought it was an orgy. I thought the word climax, and seeing the poster, I thought, oh, this is another Love 3D that he's
and
done.
It's Gaspar Noé, so it's like,
Noé.
Well, what are you gonna do now?
Yeah,
Gaspar?
so I really did think. I thought, oh, okay, he's done another sex film, basically. And yeah, was quite pleasantly surprised to see that it was a big, musical dance thing or whatever you want to call it.
A dance horror.
A dance horror, exactly. Yeah, that's a good choice. I would probably go with Possum. Possum was like a poster that really caught my eye and made me go, holy fuck, I want to see that, because it's a really creepy poster with just that kind of sort of shadowy looking shot of a kind of grim looking bed and that sort of spider creature at the top of it.
That was creepy.
And that film is like, I didn't love it, but there are elements of the sort of design of it and the creature design that I thought was incredible, and like some of the creepiest images that I've seen in horror this year. It was really like, ugh. And the poster kind of perfectly captured the mood of the film, I think. Yeah,
totally.
Hi Mike, it's Louise Blaine. My favourite horror movie of the year is Revenge, because everyone will say Hereditary, and Revenge deserves some neon-lit synth soundtrack love. It's bold, it's beautiful, it's bloody, and it made me roar. So, yeah, you could say that I like it.
Okay, best opening scene of a movie. What was the opening scene? What was the film that's opened and you were like, holy fucking shit, I'm going to love this?
Okay, I'm going to have to go with Climax again.
Hey, amazing.
But, however, I will, with the caveat that actually the opening scene is a bunch of sort of video interviews.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say that's just title credits. It doesn't really count.
Okay. So you're talking about the opening dance number.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is like a 45-minute uninterrupted dance sequence.
Yes.
And then the actual film begins. So... The title card of kind of Climax, a Gaspar Noé film, whatnot, appears after about 45 minutes in.
This is such a cheat answer, because you're basically saying the first hour of the movie is your favourite opening sequence.
Exactly. But it is. It's a classic Noé kind of, I don't know if it's all a one shot. It certainly feels like that. It feels like you're...
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it a couple times now, but I always just it makes me go into such a trance that I even forget to notice whether it's a one shot. I really doubt it, but it's just beautifully done. It's incredibly energetic, and it just completely gets you into this film without actually letting you in on what the hell is going on.
Yes, exactly. It is phenomenal. It was like... That is, and we'll probably talk about this film a lot as we go on, but it was like one of those films that made me want to like stand up and dance just watching it as well, and there's something really like weirdly joyous about that movie, even though it is quite a fucked up movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it makes me really happy. So, there we go. That's a good one. And my favourite opening sequence that I could think of, the one that really got me straight away, was Assassination Nation. I was a big fan of that film, and what I loved about the opening is it kind of starts with music from it starts with some Ennio Morricone music. Did you notice that music as they kind of like there's this kind of la 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 la, and it's like Giallo. I think it's from like The Bird with the Crystal Plumage or one of those like 70s Giallo movies. And obviously you get that kind of opening narration of this is how, my town lost its fucking mind. And then you get those brilliant trigger warnings where they tell you what's coming up in the movie. It is like one of the most 2018 movies you can possibly get.
All the themes are like, nudity, toxic masculinity, fragile male egos.
Yeah, it's so good.
And this is the story of how my town, Salem, lost its mind. But let's start at the beginning.
I loved it, and that kind of really set the tone for what we were about to get for the next 2 hours in that film.
If I can add a different category to this, just because you made me think of this. Favorite closing sequence?
Yes, please do.
Mine would be Assassination Nation, because there's this, after everything kind of blows up and goes to shit and everything happens in the film, the film ends with this high school marching band walking down the street playing a cover of Miley Cyrus's We Can't Stop. And I thought that was just such an amazing way to let the audience down from kind of a really in-your-face aggressive film.
Yes, incredible. If anyone hasn't checked out Assassination Nation, it is worth a watch, isn't it? It kind of felt like it went under the radar a bit, but it was brilliant.
For that Miley Cyrus cover alone, it's worth watching.
For that Miley Cyrus cover alone, exactly. Okay, and this doesn't have to be your favourite film of the year, but what was your most enjoyable or fun or memorable kind of cinema film watching experience of 2018?
Okay, I'm gonna give a wanky answer.
Yeah, good.
and a tolerable one. So my wanky answer would be watching Climax at 8 a.m. at the first Cannes screening.
Amazing. I mean, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Climax at 8 a.m.
Climax at 8 a.m. The first screening at Cannes. Queuing up for like an hour. Was pissing down with rain. I was really tired. And then that comes on and it just kind of gives you life more than any other coffee.
Yes.
But then the actual kind of really fun one is the complete opposite. I went to see the midnight screening of Knife and Heart at the London Film Festival, and it was at the Prince Charles, and it was the exact right crowd, and it was just really, really fun, and people were into it. They were laughing. They were completely in with the characters in the story, and it just felt like the audience and the situation and the cinema were the exact right combination for that film.
Totally. So tell us a bit about it, like for people that don't, because again, Knife Plus Heart, I don't think has gotten like a wide release, has it? It's kind of done the festival circuit. But tell us a bit about it. It's kind of like a gay porn giallo. Is that how you describe it?
It's I actually thought it was really romantic. Like it was a really kind of thoughtful giallo set in the 1970s gay porn industry in France. And it stars Vanessa Paradis as this sort of like a mogul porn producer
who's brilliant in it.
And she's going through some bits, she like her and her girlfriend are sort of breaking up, and there's a killer in the loose who seems to be targeting some of her key male stars. So she's trying to kind of protect them but also rebuild her relationship, maintain her business, find out who the killer is. And it just gets really kind of weird and naughty, and it kind of really throws back to the kind of giallos from the 70s, but also has a really fun and sad campy streak to it as well, and touches on a lot of kind of conversations and elements about the gay community in that era as well. And it has, Vanessa Paradis playing this really interesting female character as the lead. And
it has a dildo that becomes a knife.
Well, we've seen that in Slumber Party Massacre 2 or 3.
It was brilliant. I loved that film as well. And I thought when I started watching it that the kind of gag or the novelty was going to wear off. I was like, how long can they keep this up? But I really genuinely got quite like emotionally involved in it. Like you said, it's quite...
I thought it was a lot more heartfelt and sincere than I expected it to be. What about your best cinema experience?
This is a much more mainstream one than yours, but I have gone with A Quiet Place, which I saw at a screening all the way at the beginning of the year. It almost feels weird that A Quiet Place was this year, but I think it was January or February I saw it, and it is one of those horror movie experiences that has stuck with me all year. Like, I think it's not creepy or like insidious in the same way that movies like Hereditary are, but it's just a really fun roller coaster ride movie that was filled with like proper visceral scares. And I think for a movie that is about being quiet and not making any noise, we watched it again, not to sound like a wanker, I saw it in Dolby, and it was like the perfect time to see it, I think, because there were moments where it was like completely silent and you could hear a pin drop in the audience. Everyone was absolutely like, if somebody would just like shuffle in their seat, everyone around them would jump or something at the note, because it was that type of a movie where you all felt like you were in it together, basically. Kind of no one wanted to breathe too loudly or make a noise. You know?
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'm really sad because I think I missed out on the true appeal of A Quiet Place because I saw it at home.
Yeah.
I missed it at the cinema, so I didn't get that experience.
Well, that's it. I do think with A Quiet Place, I loved it, but I haven't really felt compelled to watch it a second time. And I think for me, it's like, it was just a really great cinema experience. And I don't know whether it will hold up as well watching it at home. It's one of those movies that I think...
it didn't end up on a single one of my...
Yeah, so what did you think of it?
List.
You weren't a massive fan?
I just thought it was quite boring.
Oh, well, well, that's the thing. It's quite conventional when you kind of strip it down, but I think it is conventional, but it's a very well-made conventional film, I think.
True, although I did think that the characters behaved in such dumb ways. I just got very, very distracted by it.
I thought they were quite smart. I was like, you put this walking on sand. I was like, you've come up with some quite good,
there's things like that.
Yeah.
But also there's things like maybe, don't get pregnant if there's a giant monster.
Yes.
Who can kill you by hearing you.
Yeah, the baby stuff was all a bit problematic. And the way that they kind of just... they slightly chickened out on that whole sequence where she gave birth. Like, she was in labour, and then the next thing you know, we cut back to her and she's had the baby, and it's like, well, surely that would have been quite a big dramatic point in that story as to how the hell she had that baby without getting hurt or killed.
Exactly.
There were those moments where I think it was very... PG-13, I think, like we said, it was the biggest grossing horror movie of the year, and I think it was like playing to the widest possible audience, wasn't it? But it was one of my most fun, memorable cinema experiences. I loved it.
Hi Mike, it's Rihanna. My favourite horror film of 2018 has got to be A Quiet Place, because for me it's quite slim pickings when it comes to horror. I don't enjoy a lot of what comes out, and this I just thought was so original and unique. John Krasinski isn't necessarily known for being a director, and to direct and write the screenplay for this and star in it with his wife Emily Blunt, I think was just such an achievement. I've never been so sort of creeped out in this way during a horror film. It looked gorgeous. Also, the fact that they incorporated a child with a disability in it in a completely natural kind of way and kind of centered this whole film around her experience, I think was, again, really unique. Hadn't seen that before. I think more people should go out and see A Quiet Place if they haven't yet. Have a brilliant new year with me, and I hope to be on your podcast again soon if you'll have me.
Okay, we're going to get into some sort of more creepy horror categories now. We'll go through some of these quite quickly. Who was your favourite creepy kid of 2018?
God. You
creepy
stole
kids.
her from me. I really wanted to say the girl from Hereditary, but I'm not gonna.
And I have picked. This is my first Hereditary pick. I've gone with little Charlie from Hereditary. I couldn't think of any other creepy kids.
Well, to be honest, in hindsight, and having thought and spoken about this film at length, I think she's more sad than creepy.
She is. Absolutely.
I'm going to say the kids, all of them, from Tigers Are Not Afraid.
Tigers Are Not Afraid. Interesting.
Which is an amazing film that also doesn't have distribution in the UK yet. But it played at Fright Fest earlier this year. And it's basically about a bunch of kids in, I want to say, Mexico somewhere.
Yes,
where they're kind of left to fend for themselves and try to save kind of the protagonist's mum.
Yeah.
And generally kids behaving like adults is the creepiest thing I can imagine.
Yes. Interesting. Well, again, like you said about my pick, I would see them more as quite sad, like those kids, more than creepy. But your pick just reminded me of another one I would put in. If we're going for festival movies that may not have been released this year officially, I would go for this French movie that I saw at LFF called School's Out. I don't know if you got a chance to see that, did you?
No,
yeah,
I heard really good things.
It was really good. And I won't give away too much because I think the less you know about that film, the better. But it is about this. It starts off with a teacher of a class who, the opening scene is this class are all working quietly and the teacher throws himself out of a window and commits suicide. And then we're introduced to this new main character who's the replacement teacher who basically suspects that these kids are more sinister than they seem. And he becomes kind of obsessed with figuring out what happened to the previous teacher and what these kids are actually up to. And it's got a kind of like Village of the Damned kind of feel where all these kids are like kind of super aware, super intelligent.
Kids behaving like adults are creepy.
So they would be up there as well for me, creepy kids. But yeah, my official pick is obviously Hereditary. I mean, she cuts heads off pigeons.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
This one's quite niche. Favourite witch? I mean, witches are kind of back. We've talked about this, and we've had a few witchy things in 2018. Who's been your favourite witch of 2018?
I'm going to have to be basic and go with Sabrina Spellman from Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
So you were a fan of Sabrina?
I was. So I was a massive fan as a teenager of the original Sabrina and the Teenage Witch show. Yes. This is an entirely different proposition where Netflix have rebooted the Sabrina stories with a much, much darker tone. Less campy than Riverdale, but set in the same sort of universe.
Yes.
And very kind of overtly talking about witchcraft and Satanism in the same breath. And Sabrina here is played by Kierna Shipka, who rose to fame through Mad Men.
Yes.
And also Feud, where she plays Bette Davis' daughter. And I think she's a really wonderful lead. And she plays Sabrina with a darker twist as well. She is kind of very aware of herself, very aware of her strange sort of almost mixed blood situation where she's half witch, half mortal, and she lives sort of between both worlds. So she's got the teenage drama going on and like the big, you got to promise your soul to Satan drama going on the other side. And the world building of that show I found really interesting because it delved really heavily into the mythology and the world and the rules of witches in that realm and how they relate themselves to Satan, how they relate to each other, how they relate to the mortal world as well. So yeah, that would be my favorite witch, and also because I think it's gonna keep going. It's been renewed for season 2, and
she's gonna become more and more of a badass witch as it goes on, isn't she? Surely, yeah.
And we've seen already in the Christmas special that they released a few weeks ago, when I say maybe even a week ago, it continues with that tone. And she, at the end, without kind of spoiling anything, she has a sort of transformation towards the end of the show. So she becomes even physically quite different from the initial proposition, from the initial Sabrina that we met.
Oh, cool.
So I'm really intrigued to see where we're going to go next with that. Amazing. And I really hope that kind of the gothy, emo-ish Sabrina is going to be amazing in season 2.
Okay, cool. I need to stick with it. I'm about halfway through season 1 and I've kind of paused. I kind of have lost momentum. Well, I really love elements of it, and then there are other elements. I think, like you made the comparison there to Riverdale. I hate Riverdale, and you love Riverdale.
I'm loving it right now.
There are elements of it, and I'm aware I'm not the target audience. That's the thing, and but like there are elements of it that are a bit too Riverdale-y for me of Sabrina. Yeah, I would go with. This is probably again quite an obvious choice. I am going to go with Tilda Swinton, her character in Suspiria. I was debating which witch to go for from Suspiria, and I was half going to go for Helena Marcos,
Ray-Ban,
Jabba the Hutt, and Ray-Ban. But she was ridiculous. Tilda Swinton as an actor is somebody who just has this like air of, I don't know, authority, epicness, intimidation. She's,
oh my God, if there is the gods of movie making are listening, can we please remake The Witches starring Tilda Swinton
as the Grand High Witch? Yes.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Not that The Witches needs remaking.
It definitely does not need remaking, but I do want to see more witchy Tilda Swinton.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Yeah, no, she's good. Well, there are talks, aren't there, of doing another, like Luca Guadagnino talking about making this a trilogy and stuff. So we might see Tilda pop up again. I won't spoil too much about this because I think a lot of people still haven't watched Suspiria yet. But obviously, as we know from the setup with this movie, it is about witches. Tilda Swinton is the main witch. And she's, as ever with Tilda Swinton, fucking amazing, really. She's really good. And also, she treads a fine line all the way through the film as to whether or not, are we supposed to be scared of her? Is she the villain? Is she the one we're aligned with? Is she not? And that kind of plays out all the way through the movie, all the way up until the ending where it's kind of revealed. But yeah, she's awesome in it, isn't she? Very good. She also gives another couple of performances in this movie, Tilda Swinton, that I'm less keen on. But as Madame Blanc, she's amazing. That's been my favourite witch of 2018.
Guys, can you keep it down? I'm trying to record something. Sorry about that. It's Brad Hanson here. I've just taken a moment away from my family just to let you know that my favourite horror film of the year is going to be the basic bitch answer of Hereditary. I think that Ari Aster's shocker, shall we call it, really tapped into some deep-seated fears, and I think on its first watch is ultimately very shocking and very powerful and very moving. But what's even better about the film is that you find so much more allegorical layers hidden within the narrative and within even the background when you watch it. So that would probably be my favourite film of the year. Anyway, I've got to get back to the family, so nice talking to you. Guys, save some for me. Jesus Christ.
Okay, favourite monster then, just general kind of creature, feature, monster type thing in horror this year. What's been your favourite?
I'm gonna go with the dress from In Fabric.
That makes you a wanker for so many reasons, but yes, carry on.
In Fabric is the new film by Peter Strickland.
Yes, and we shouldn't give too much away about this because it hasn't officially come out yet.
No,
yeah.
But there is a teaser trailer out,
yes.
So we know the general proposition. The general proposition is that there is a killer dress.
A killer dress.
A killer red dress.
It's a phenomenal film, by the way.
It's a phenomenal dress, but it also kills.
Yeah.
So purchase at your own peril.
Yes. Purchase from your high street store at your own peril.
So yeah, this film is coming out next year. It will be released in the UK. And Peter Strickland is obviously an incredibly interesting filmmaker. He's a very, very unique cinematic voice in the British filmmaking landscape.
Yeah.
So this film was unbelievably fun.
Yes.
To watch, really, really funny and quite gory.
Yes.
But centrally, the key element is that it's about a killer fucking dress.
It's amazing.
I love it.
It is amazing. It's been, again, if I was, I mean, you're breaking the rules more than me here, Anna, but that would be one of my top of the year in Fabric if I was including it, because it's phenomenal. If you like Peter Strickland, if you like the weird stuff he does, Barbarian Sound Studio and Duke of Burgundy, it's kind of like a mesh of those two in a way. There are so many moments that I want to talk about. Yes, good shout. There you go, just a red dress as your favourite monster of 2018. I love it. Mine would be, this is one that has really stuck with me all year since I saw it, Alex Garland's Annihilation. Loved that movie. And the moment that really got me was the moment where the women are all tied up. They're tied up in a house, and I can't remember why now. They're all tied to chairs, and this bear monster comes in to kind of get them. Do you remember this moment? Have you seen the film?
I've seen the film, but I can't remember the moment.
I can't believe you don't remember the bear. Do you not remember the bear?
I don't remember the bear.
Oh my god! Like, this is the only moment I can remember, really.
Don't react.
It looks like a kind of hybrid of a bear and a few other things, and it makes these noises like that sound like kind of screams and stuff when it opens its mouth. And it's just a really cool kind of big original creature design, because I think a lot of the time with horror it's always a bit like when you see the monster, sometimes it doesn't live up to what, you know, to just not, you know, suggesting it, I suppose. But this was a monster where I was like, holy shit, that is going to be, I'm going to have nightmares about that thing. All right, so that was our favourite kind of new monster, new creature, new creation. What about, we've had a lot of like returning franchises this year. We had Puppet Master come back, we had Hellraiser come back. What's been your favourite returning monster, your favourite classic horror movie monster that's been back this year?
I mean, I think there's only one option here.
Yeah, there is.
And I think it has to be Michael Myers.
It does, doesn't it?
And I think we agree on this one, don't we?
We agree on this
and
one. I've gone with Michael Myers.
I did not like the film that much.
Yes.
But
not a lot of people did they? It's interesting. Yeah.
But in terms of bringing back and refreshing an established horror movie monster,
yes,
I think there's no other option in 2018. It has to be Michael Myers, because they did make a big deal out of it, and it was a big deal about returning to the sort of the vibe and the respectability of the original franchise, of the original 2 Halloweens, basically.
Yeah, definitely. What was interesting about him was that it was like, because Michael Myers now at this point is like 60 or something, and you saw element, like you saw bits of him every now and then, and he really did look like this old man. And they'd even aged the mask, didn't they? And I know we talked about this on the BFI podcast. Like, what did you think of the way that they kind of faded and dirtied up the mask and even made that look aged in a way, didn't they?
Well, I have to give credit here to Paul from the Prince Charles, because he made this point.
Did he? Okay.
That it was too overly stylized, because actually when you think about it, the man beneath the mask, so Michael Myers himself, is aged, cracked, he is sort of broken, so he ages and kind of is ravished by time, the same as everyone else is.
Yes.
But the mask is the creation, so that's the myth.
Yes.
It's the shape that we're terrified of, because it's entirely empty.
Yes.
And we don't know what's behind it. We don't know what's moving him. We don't see the humanity, if there is any, in Michael Myers, because it's always covered by this white mask. So the fact that they have aged the masks to reflect the person behind it actually doesn't really make that much sense.
No.
Because what's actually fundamentally scary is that this old man is still horrifying and terrifying us, but the mask is effectively kind of the movie image.
Yeah.
It's, this is the Michael Myers of the cinematic universe of Halloween and Carpenter and all of that. But actually, it's the man behind it that's doing all of the awful things that he does in those films.
And also the whiteness of it, the blankness of it, is what makes it so powerful and scary, isn't it, in a way? It's like a blank slate, that mask.
Yeah, exactly. So aging it up kind of defeats the purpose of the mask.
Yeah, I agree. It's the same with when Rob Zombie did it, and he kind of cracked it and dirtied it and made it look more Rob Zombie, basically, didn't he? And it's not as scary as just that kind of blank William Shatner slate that it was originally. Exactly. But yeah, it's undeniable, isn't it? I think, if we're going to talk about classic monsters returning this year, it is Michael Myers, of course.
Absolutely.
Of course. And he still, the movie wasn't perfect, but Michael Myers still had quite a few good moments here and there, some good kills. All right, what about your favourite? So we've done monsters, we've done witches, we've done creepy kids, but just what is like your scariest human character, your scariest normal dude or girl in a movie?
Totally. So I instantly thought of a couple of the dudes from Cam. So Cam is, again, an original movie. It also premiered at, I want to say, Fantastic Fest and then London Film Festival. And then it went straight to Netflix. It's a Netflix original.
Yes, so it's out there to watch right now.
Exactly. And it essentially centers around a Cam girl who starts experiencing weird things where sort of another version of herself is sort of taking over her identity and her Cam account, which is her livelihood. And the creepiest characters in that film I found were some of her regular clients.
Oh my God, yes.
So particularly to Tinker, played by Pat Starra, and Barney, played by Michael Dempsey. They're very, very two different types of dudes. So Tinker is sort of, very helpful, kind of like a nerdy older
sweaty.
Man.
He's really
always sweaty. So he sort of starts semi-stalking her.
Yes.
In a kind of really low-key, well, not a really low-key way. He moves to the city where she lives. She sort of runs into him in supermarkets and things like that when she's, just doing her normal, regular life stuff. Yeah. And she calls him out on it. And she's like, no, you're not. Like, this is not the relationship that we have. We have a kind of a transactional relationship, but also it's a weird and interesting way to explore it, because part of the relation that they have is sort of this like boyfriend girlfriend relationship, but it's all through a laptop. And there's this really, really amazing scene where basically, without setting up the scene or kind of letting you know how or why they get to it, but they're both in a hotel room and sort of she's in trouble and he's sort of supposedly helping her out, but she's also kind of scared that he might actually be the person behind some of the things that have been happening to her. And he's obviously in love with her, but then she goes into the bathroom and she sees him masturbating over a digital image of her. And I found that so creepy because it's like you have the real woman that you're supposedly love in the room next to you.
But he likes the fake.
It's just the digital obsession.
Fantasy.
Yeah. And the other character, Barney, who's also kind of one of her regulars, also he's like the opposite, you know, kind of a big burly sort of family man dude who will take her out to dinner and pay for her and things like that. But it's all a veneer of niceness, and underneath, at the minimal resistance, he turns into a really possessive, aggressive, sort of very animalistic type character. And the kind of the lead in Cam is quite a smart woman, and she will instantly kind of read through these things and these facades and try to keep herself safe as well. But I found those two examples actually really realistic and creepily so.
You're right, and like really interestingly, like two completely different ends of the spectrum, ways in which men can be that creepy.
Exactly.
Mine is along very similar lines in a completely different film. I've gone with Steven Soderbergh's movie Unsane from the beginning of the year, which I loved. That was this movie that was like, it starred Claire Foy and it was all shot on an iPhone, and it was a bit of a weird kind of small kind of pulpy movie in a way. But it's about, well, it's basically about her having a stalker and whether or not she does have a stalker or whether or not it's all in her mind. But this man who she thinks is stalking her, called David, who she suddenly sees as like working as an orderly in the hospital, and she freaks out and she's like, that's the guy who's been harassing me, who's stalking me, and he seems to have no idea who she is, and everyone kind of thinks she's crazy. But he's played by Joshua Leonard, who is Josh from the Blair Witch Project, amazingly.
What?
I know, right? I was like, that guy looks really familiar.
I did not make that connection at all.
Yeah. It's always weird when you see the cast of the Blair Witch Project appear in things. It's like, what the fuck? Yeah. Joshua Leonard.
Oh my God. That's an excellent choice. He is intense.
He's intense. And, you know, I'll try not to spoil it too much, but I think regardless of, you know, whether or not he is the stalker, the way that he's shot, and it's the way that film looks, kind of like quite gritty and like grim because it's all on an iPhone.
Sort of stalkerish as well.
Stalkerish, right? Surveillance-ish.
This man, he's followed me all the way here from Boston. I'm calling the cops and I want him arrested.
I loved it. I loved her performance in it. I loved the kind of the themes of it.
Me too.
And the fact that it actually made stalking, and mostly it's women who are victims of stalking, right, seem so claustrophobic and so scary, even before anything kind of extremely violent or starts happening. The sense of dread and constant paranoia and just this sense of aggressiveness, like defensive aggressiveness that Claire Foy portrays is so visceral. I found it really impactful.
We've seen like 1,000,001 horror movies, right, about stalkers or teenage girls being stalked, you know, like Michael Myers, for example, but like this really puts it in a real life context of what it's actually like in the age of social media and mobile phones to be stalked, and how easily people can find you and continue to pursue you,
and how people will not believe you.
Yes, and how no one, like that she's portrayed as this like hysterical woman,
and the networks and the systems that are set in place supposedly to protect you can be turned against you.
Okay, so there you go. They're our favourite creepy human men in movies this year. There's been a lot to choose from. What about your favourite kill? What is your favourite kill scene, gore scene? Well, not gore scene. Favourite murder or kill scene in horror this year?
Okay, I think the one that instantly came to mind was the podcaster murders from Halloween. And I remember because we were in the same screening.
Yes.
And we were watching the film with Henry, who I co-host the BFI podcast with.
Yeah.
And when that scene came along, the podcasters in Halloween are so obnoxious,
awful,
and so awful and hateable and in your face and just stupid.
Yeah.
That when it came time for them to be murdered, we were just cackling.
Oh, it was brilliant.
And there was an element there as well of kind of, you know, real life humor, because we were watching this to cover the film on the podcast.
Yes, we literally talked about it on a podcast the next day. Yeah, it was brilliant. they were the most irritating part of that film. So in some ways, yeah, the death scene, although I can't remember how they died. Was it the teeth in the toilet cubicle? Was it the toilet?
He murdered her in the toilet cubicle, and that bit was in the trailer as well, because it's that bit where, you see his feet underneath the toilet cubicle.
And he drops all the teeth over the door, doesn't he? Yeah.
So it's her co-host's teeth.
Mine would be, again, the one that stuck with me is his, and again, I will try not to go too much into spoilers here because it's a fairly recent movie, but it will be Suspiria. There is a kind of dance murder body horror scene involving the character of Olga in a dance studio filled with mirrors, which is, I mean, that's been the murder or kill scene that has stuck with me. I think it's gonna stick with me. It's gonna be the one that stands out from 2018. It's pretty good, right? It's
pretty epic. I mean, I loved it.
It's pretty epic.
I love it when sort of I use air quotes here, respectable directors do horror.
Yes.
Because they tend to play around with genre in unconventional ways.
Yes.
And with the kill scenes and the gory scenes, Luca Guadagnino, like, I did not expect him to go for it that much, but he did, and I loved it.
It's amazing, right? It's brilliant. And yeah, I think like what's really interesting about it as well is that it is really disturbing, but also kind of beautiful. And also this woman is murdered in a way that her skin never is ripped, so she never bleeds. It's all like internally done, and that kind of makes it all the more gruesome in a way.
It's like a really bad yoga session.
Yeah, basically. But I don't think there's a single kind of drop of blood that's spilled in it.
No, there isn't. It's all, you can only just sort of see her becoming sort of purplish and bluish because of all the internal bleeding, but her skin isn't actually ripped at any point.
Yeah.
So, but you can just hear it. The sound in that scene is incredible.
Absolutely incredible. Yeah, I'm sure that makes up about 80% of what makes that death so powerful. Yeah, it's the sound effects. Bones crunching and that kind of thing is never good. If we're going to be also, if I can also cheat and name another movie that's technically not been released, and I know you'll concur with me on this, I'm going with Lords of Chaos. There is a murder scene in the film Lords of Chaos where somebody fainted at LFF during that scene, and I won't talk too much about it, but it's a stabbing scene that is done like so realistically and so slowly and takes its time.
Well, that was, I cheated as well again. That was going to be my best gore scene.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Well, that's a good segue then, because that's the next category we're going to get to. Favorite gore moment. So that is your favorite sort of gore scene.
Absolutely, yeah. Because it's almost a very emotional gore scene, and we can't really talk about who, why, or how this person kind of gets stabbed, but it is so extensive.
Yes.
I want to say it's like 5 or 7 minutes of stabbing. It feels so realistic. It's painful. It's really bloody, and it's very drawn out. And it also feels really, really kind of emotionally rich, because
it really does.
You so know who these people are.
Yes. And
yes, I was at the LFF screening where somebody fainted, and I may or may not have been on a date. Amazing. What a date movie, and we'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, that was a scene that was really, and I think you're right, I think because of the build up to it, there's an emotional impact to it as well. But it doesn't like over sentimentalize it. Like, it doesn't give you loads of like big music to make it more emotional or anything. It's quite matter of fact about it. It's very raw.
Yeah, raw and real and kind of cold in the way that it's shot and filmed, where you just feel like you're watching this person slowly die in front of you. And it is, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty brutal. Check that out. I think it's getting distributed by Arrow in the UK next year.
Yeah, I think it's coming out in March.
Okay, so definitely everyone keep an eye out for Lords of Chaos, starring Rory Culkin of all people. What a guy. So my favourite gore moment, a little bit sillier, but it is from the Gareth Evans movie Apostle, which came out on Netflix this year. Apostle, I didn't love it, but it did have some really good sort of death scenes and good body horror and gore and that kind of stuff. So obviously it starts off as this sort of very Wicker Man-esque folk horror about Dan Stevens' character. He goes to this island to track down his missing sister, and the island is the kind of, it's this sort of cult that live there with this kind of weird traditions, and it's all very folk horror. And then you find out there, obviously, as with all folk horror, there are moments when characters get sacrificed, and some of the ways in which some of these characters get sacrificed, and there's just one scene in particular involving a drill bit going into somebody's skull and into somebody's brain, which is just really like, Okay, all right, let's move on to your favourite, this is an important one, best scare. Best favourite, scariest moment in a movie for you all year.
This will be a spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Okay.
So, spoilers for Hereditary.
Hereditary. Skip forward 1 minute if you haven't seen Hereditary. Go for it.
This moment made me go, what the fuck? Audibly in the cinema every single time I've seen the film.
Yeah.
Which is when Toni Collette is climbing up the walls, staring at her son in the corner of his bedroom, and the camera's not focused on her, it's a very wide shot.
Yes.
So we just see the guy wake up, kind of uneasy, you don't really know what's going on, he's sort of looking around, and then all of a sudden at different points, so if you see this film in a cinema with an audience, everybody sees her at different points, so it's sort of like a delayed scare that comes.
Yes.
You just hear people jumping and going, oh shit!
Yes.
And it is terrifying, and when he looks to where she is, you just see her kind of climbing up the ceiling
like
and out of the room, making no noise, and it is fucking terrifying.
It's amazing.
I loved it. That was the most unexpected scare of the year for me. I
agree. I had to go with Hereditary as well for this. I'm trying to pick, because there are so many scary moments in Hereditary, I was trying to pick a different one. And I've got two others that really creeped me out in different ways. The first one is obviously the death, the decapitation. And that was a genuine, gasp. I gasped and put my hands on my head at that moment, like the most dramatic fashion. I sort of went, what the fuck? Because that was the moment, it was like the Psycho Janet Leigh shower scene where you go, what film am I watching now? And it was really scary, and it was really shocking as well. And the other moment that really freaked me out, because of Toni Collette's performance in it, is when they do the seance, and she channels Charlie, and puts on the kind of kiddie voice and stuff.
Yeah. Mom? I don't like this. Dad, I don't like this.
What's happening?
Please stop.
What's going on? Mom!
Please, you're really freaking me out. Please stop.
What's
Dad,
happening? Why is everyone scared? Why are you scaring me?
Make it stop! Make it fucking stop!
And you're right there with the husband, played by Gabriel Byrne, and the son, who are going, Mum, stop this, what's going on, what the fuck is happening, why are you doing this, why is your voice got all weird? So that was just another one of the millions of moments in Hereditary that made my skin crawl.
Hi Mike, it's Rosie from Den of Geek here, and my favourite horror film of 2018 is Hereditary. So from the opening shots, it's just a really gorgeous piece of filmmaking, just really attractive and intelligent and very original as well. The performances, of course, were extraordinary. I'm really hoping that Toni Collette does get recognised come awards season. I suspect she probably won't, but I thought she was absolutely brilliant. And of course, a special shout out to Alex Wolff too, who was just amazing. But mostly I loved it because it scared the crap out of me, and I found it so deeply harrowing and traumatic, almost from the word go, this kind of picture of a family who are never ever going to be okay again. And then of course we get to the final batshit ending, which personally I found as a massive relief after the sort of crippling trauma of the rest of the movie. So I thought it was utterly fantastic, and yes, comfortably my favourite horror film of 2018. Love it. Thanks.
Okay, what about, so not so much creepy, but the best jump scare? What's been your favourite jump scare of 2018?
To be honest, it's been slim pickings for me.
Yeah, right.
So I had to really think back, and it's cheating a little bit because this film did get released in the UK this year, but I saw it last year.
No, that's fine.
At a festival, but it would be the one good scene for me from Marrowbone.
Oh right, yeah.
Is a jump scare where, again, just so typical.
Yeah.
But maybe it's because I was already so bored watching the film that the fact that it elicited any reaction from me was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
And there was just a scene, so to set the film up a little bit, it's a very sort of classical sort of haunted house, creepy family, tons of creepy kids set up, where these group of orphans, they're all brothers and sisters, are living by themselves in a house. They've been orphaned, but they're trying to play the system so they can remain together, stick together, and potentially keep the house where they're living. And there is one scene when one of the smallest kids, he might be 5 or 6 or something, is sort of playing around in this room where he's not supposed to be, and he's playing around with a sheet over his head, as you do when you're a creepy kid. And one of the doors open, and then someone else is behind him, and that is all that happens.
Yes.
And I jumped at that, and then I was like, oh, this movie sucks.
Yeah. But, you know, that's the problem. And that's going to be the same with my pick, where, you know, regardless of the quality of the film, sometimes a jump scare will make you jump. You know, that's the thing. And regardless of whether or not it's earned, sometimes you just get some really big, jumpy scares that will get you. My pick is, I was trying desperately to think of something positive to say about The Nun. Corin Hardy's The Nun. And I want to apologise to you, Anna, because I know you've watched The Nun recently in preparation for this podcast.
You owe me so much.
I owe you big time. You watched Slender Man and The Nun.
You owe me twice.
I love that you watched those in preparation for this, just in case they ended up, you know, topping, winning something. The Nun. I mean, like, this is the only positive thing I can say about The Nun, is that it has that jump scare, which was in the trailer, to be honest. So actually, I knew it was coming in the film, but in the trailer it made me jump, which is where Tessa Farminger's character is kind of walking through this sort of cave under the convent, and you see the nun in the background, and it's just kind of this nun with no face. It's just kind of lingering there in the background, and you're watching it and you're going, holy shit, and then it disappears, and then you're waiting for it to pop up again behind her, and it comes out from the side and kind of lunges and pins her against the wall. And it's just, again, very kind of predictable, well, maybe not predictable, but a very kind of classic, conventional, like, misdirection jump scare, isn't it? That those movies in that kind of universe are known for. But it did make me jump more than any other moment this year, I've got to say.
I'm so impressed you have anything positive to say about The Nun.
Hi, Mike. Festive greetings. Mary Wild here from the Projections podcast. My favorite horror movie of 2018 has to be The House That Jack Built, because it perfectly fulfills director Lars von Trier's mantra that a film should be like a pebble in your shoe, that it should occupy your mind and bother you, not leave you in peace for a moment. This is a film I've been anticipating for a long time, and I like this sort of thing. For those who haven't seen it, it's a psychological horror film starring the amazing Matt Dillon as a serial killer. And we follow him as he confesses his crimes to a companion, Verge, played by the brilliant Bruno Ganz, over the course of 12 years in the U.S. state of Washington. Structurally, it's very similar to Nymphomaniac, with set pieces depicting 5 incidents and an unforgettable epilogue. I love the references to Andrei Tarkovsky and the interesting cerebral tangents on art and the creative process. As you know, I'm very interested in cinematic representations of mental illness, and The House That Jack Built is an excellent study in narcissism, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and psychopathy. I think Lars did a really good job applying film techniques to portray those complex psychological states. Lars heads will love this, and I think horror fans more generally will find a lot to appreciate in this unique serial killer movie. Happy viewing!
Okay, some sillier categories we're going into now. We touched upon this earlier. What would be your worst date, or best worst date, best bad date, however you want to name it, date movie of 2018?
I have to say, it's an excellent movie.
Yes.
And it was an okay date.
Yes.
But nobody should ever take anyone to see this movie.
Yes.
And it's Lords of Chaos.
Lords of Chaos, again.
It's a great movie, and I loved it. But I don't know what it says about any human being to take another human being on a date to see a movie where there's extended violent
snapping.
Scenes.
Yes.
And somebody faints in the screening.
I mean, that's pretty, yeah.
Does not bode well, does it?
It doesn't bode well. It doesn't bode well. I don't want to pry,
kids.
but did you guys ever have a second date after that? Did you have a follow-up date? Did the date go all right after that moment?
It went all right.
Okay, good.
We didn't have a follow-up date. Clearly not a great impression.
There you go. And that's why it's your pick for worst date movie of the year. All right, I'm going for one I think is even worse than that, personally. I am going for Lars von Trier's The House That Jack Built. And I think obviously that there is no Lars von Trier movie should ever be a date movie. I was trying to think of a single Lars movie that you'd want to go on a date.
Dancer in the Dark is quite sad.
Yes, really sad. But too sad, right? For a date?
Yeah, but it's not, violent, in your face, aggressive, or aggressively misogynistic, is it?
I was trying to work out if this maybe be a worse date movie than Antichrist or not, because Antichrist has got a lot of genital mutilation and a couple basically being so torn apart that they kill each other, essentially. Whereas House That Jack Built is just lots of extended scenes of mutilation, basically.
Tell you why it's also one of the worst date movies ever. That you could possibly go on a date with, because it's fucking so long. It's 2.5 hours long. It's unbearable. What if you don't like the movie or the person? You're stuck there for like almost 3 hours.
That would be, I mean, it's a brave choice, isn't it? I'd like to know if there is anyone out there who's listening to this who has taken anyone on a date to see The House That Jack Built.
Maybe it's a good way to scope people out.
Yeah, well, in some ways. I guess that's the thing. It's like, I guess if these are the types of movies you're into and your date enjoys it, it's like, they're a keeper, maybe.
Yes, exactly.
But the problem is that I really didn't like The House That Jack Built either. So yeah, it wouldn't be one that I would want to sit through, and especially not on a date. It's pretty
especially not on a first date.
Oh god. So let's move on. What about worst movie to watch when you're hungover?
Okay, I'm gonna say A Slender Man. To be honest, I'd say this is the worst movie to watch at any point. But I did watch it when I was hungover, and I cursed your name so many times.
I know. I think you actually text me going, "You fucking owe me." Why did you watch it hungover? Why did you watch it at all? Why did you watch it hungover?
I watched it for this, and I watched it hungover because I was at home and I was hungover. It's like, well, let me watch 3 or 4 horror movies.
Yeah, fair enough.
And Slenderman was just boring.
Yeah.
It had no plot, had no scares.
Yeah.
But it was also, it just kept making me, I couldn't even fall asleep to it. It just kept making me angry. So I just continued to hate watching it.
Yes. It is one of those movies, definitely. And I would go with a movie that actually I loved, one of my favourite movies of the year, Climax. But I would not want to watch Gaspar Noé's upside down camera work. It's too queasy.
Oh God, no.
No, I would never watch that hungover.
Yeah, that would be terrible.
I watched Mandy. We haven't even, neither of us mentioned Mandy yet, but Mandy is a movie I watched hungover at LFF, and it really made me feel like
I can imagine.
So I think but that is like positively conventional compared to Gaspar Noé's direction in Climax. I think if I was watching his kind of spinning upside down camera movements with thumping Daft Punk and Aphex Twin while people are kind of throwing up and killing each other and whatever else, I think that's the ultimate hungover nightmare movie for me is Climax. As much as I love the movie.
Yeah, no, that's a good choice.
What about best? Okay, so this is kind of other end of the spectrum, but best movie to watch when drunk or on drugs?
I'm going to say Mandy.
You're going to go Mandy?
Yeah, my first Mandy mention.
Yeah.
Because it is, I mean, anything with Nick Cage is great for when you're drunk or high.
Yeah.
But also I'd say it's so visually stunning.
Yeah.
It's got this sort of like cosmic vibe to it.
Definitely.
Really, really beautifully shot.
It's proper kind of psychedelic, isn't it?
Like really atmospheric music as well. So I would say that if I wanted, and I did see it in the cinema, but I saw it in a kind of not in a proper cinema space. It was sort of an unconventional screening.
Yeah.
So I actually really want to see it with proper sound and with more comfortable seating and things like that. But I think it's a big screen visual experience, and
Totally.
if your mind is already slightly altered by whatever means, I can only imagine. I mean, I was like stone cold sober when I saw it, but at the same time, I can imagine it would be a really, really intriguing experience because it's so atmospheric and also quite, what is the word? Not very plot or dialogue driven. So it's very imagery driven.
Absolutely.
And you can just imagine kind of falling into the Mandy images and digging the story, the kind of the quite simple story of it.
There's something quite immersive about it, isn't it, visually? Yeah, definitely. I would
what
agree.
About you?
Yeah, well, I would have gone for that had you not, but I'm going to say then in that case, the same answer as I said for the worst hangover movie. I'm going Climax, because I did see Climax when I was very drunk on Fright Fest weekend, and it was the most fun experience. Again, like we talked about this already, but one of the most fun experiences I've had watching a movie this year. Because it's all the things that are great when you're drunk that are awful when you're hungover. So loud music, and there's loads going on, and flashy lights, and dancing, and everything's moving, and it's full on, and it's fun, and you kind of feel like we mentioned earlier, like you want to get up and dance and be involved and be immersed. So it's an amazing kind of visual, audible experience, and it's engrossing, and it's completely kind of all-encompassing, I suppose. So yeah, that's why it's a terrible movie to watch if you're feeling a bit delicate, but incredible to watch if you're in the zone on a Friday night or something like that.
Hi Mike, it's Becky Dark. I think, surprising absolutely no one, my film of 2018 was Hereditary. It's probably going to be a popular choice, so I thought I would just cover off a couple of my favourite moments from the film. No spoilers, obviously. So they all pretty much come after the shit hits the fan. Peter in the car, that close-up on his face and his reaction to whatever's just happened. The scene in the bedroom with the bit, you'll know it. My experience in the cinema as the ripple kind of went through the audience as people noticed the thing and realised what was happening was just hilarious and fucking terrifying. Annie trying to get into the attic near the end, and then everything that happens in the attic and everything that happens after the attic. So yeah, phenomenal. I want to give a special mention to Climax, which I loved, but for me, Hereditary was just next level. That's it. Thank you for all the wonderful podcasting and fun this year, Mike. You're a beautiful human being. I can't wait for 2019 and all the zombies and whatever else you've got in store for us. Okay, big love. Bye.
Okay, guilty pleasure. Guilty pleasure. I mean, no one really likes the term guilty pleasure, but are there any movies that you've loved this year that you think are objectively bad?
Do you know what? That's really tough because I actually couldn't pick. I don't think it's actually a bad movie, but I put down Upgrade.
Okay,
I don't really know why, because I think it's legitimately well written.
Yeah.
I think it's finely acted. It's quite well directed. So actually, I think it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. I guess it's got that kind of B-movie sensibility about it.
It does,
hasn't
yeah.
It?
And it was sort of, kind of, it's got like discount Tom Hardy in it. Yeah. And it's sort of like discount Ex Machina vibes.
Yeah.
So it all feels a bit discounty.
I thought it was much more fun than Ex Machina, personally.
Well, very, very different. I mean, just talking about I was thinking about the poster and the visuals of it in a sense. Totally. It's like discount Terminator.
Yeah.
But that's the only reason why I would call it a guilty pleasure, although I actually don't believe in guilty pleasures.
Me
like
neither,
if you
really.
enjoy something, just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it's generally really well written. Lee Whannell, who's the screenwriter behind Saw and a lot of other kind of like really key 21st century horror franchises and stories.
Who's actually a really great, lovely man and also really knows and loves the genre.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
I really hope he goes on to do more.
I hesitate to put it in that category, but I also really want to plug it and say it's a really fun ride.
Totally.
It's really engrossing. It's simple but well made in every single kind of aspect. I just think it was never really given the sort of the critical attention. It didn't really do festivals here, I don't think.
No.
And it sort of came and went in cinemas, so I saw it online.
Yeah.
But I think it probably would have been a really, really fun cinema experience as well.
Yeah, well, I did. I was lucky enough. The only festival I know of that it played at was Fright Fest, and I saw it at Fright Fest with Lee Whannell introducing it and stuff. And it was really great. It was one of those great Saturday night atmospheres at the movies. People cheering at some of the extreme gore kind of action sequences and stuff. And it really has that like kind of fun 80s sort of ness, doesn't
exactly.
it?
So I think kind of that sensibility makes it a really fun experience as opposed to like a proper scary horror.
Yeah, it's a good one. Mine is a little bit more objectively bad and is much more of a guilty pleasure, but I'm going for Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich, which is another movie I saw at Fright Fest, which is I think the 13th Puppet Master movie in the series.
You see, I didn't see it because at that point I was like, no, I'm not going to see any more shit for you.
Slender Man, I know. You should have done them the other way around because Puppet Master is actually quite fun. It is it's not well written. I can say that objectively, and I think a lot of the time it's not particularly well shot, but there are some amazing moments. It's written by S. Craig Zahler, who, as we know, did Dragged Across Concrete at the festivals this year and Brawl in Cell Block 99 and Bone Tomahawk, and he knows how to do these really nasty, bad taste kind of movies, and Littlest Reich is that, and it is... I don't know, I think it's probably problematic in all kinds of ways, but you basically get a whole bunch of Jewish characters in a hotel and a whole bunch of Nazi puppets who come in to sort of kill them off one by one. And some of the death sequences are incredible. So I'll just name a highlight for me is... a man who is pissing in the toilet and this flying kind of helicopter puppet comes in, decapitates him while he's still pissing. His head falls into the toilet and he's pissing on his own decapitated head in the toilet. That for me is what's made this movie such a guilty pleasure. So that is Puppet Master, Littlest Reich, my guilty pleasure of 2018. Anna, have I convinced you to go see that one?
100%.
Hi Mike, it's Alex Ailing here. My favourite horror movie of 2018 was Hereditary. I'm sure that's not going to be a surprise. Lots of people have probably picked that. But I think it was absolutely amazing. Love Toni Collette, love everything about that film. But the film that I wish more people had seen and that I want to talk to more people about is Revenge. That was the film that really connected with me in a really visceral way. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, and I wasn't expecting to feel every bone crunch and slip around in the blood as much as I did, and it just felt like just a great, horrible experience at the cinema.
Okay, these are two categories back to back. Films they didn't get and films you didn't get. So films that generally everyone loved that you didn't quite get the love for, and vice versa. So let's start with the positive one. Films they didn't get. So films that maybe not a lot of people seem to appreciate or give a lot of time for that you loved.
I'm going to say, I think we agree on this one. I'm going to say The Endless.
Yes, I'm agreeing. The Endless for me as well.
It's a brilliantly directed, really tightly scripted sci-fi by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead.
Yeah.
And it did get released in the UK. It screened at LFF last year, and it got released here. There's a beautiful Arrow Blu-ray.
Yeah, beautiful. Double disc with Resolution as well.
Which is, and The Endless is sort of a spiritual sequel to Resolution. And I think they're both such lovely dudes as well.
Yeah.
And they co-wrote, co-directed, and star in the film.
Yeah.
And it's really intriguing. It's really, really smart. But I think that not a lot of people got the opportunity to see it.
No.
And it's such a shame because everyone who did was really floored by it.
Everyone has loved it, yeah.
I think I haven't spoken to a single person or the events that I've done with the film. Everybody was, it demands more from the audience. It demands you to pay attention.
Yeah.
It's really smart, and it leaves you asking questions as opposed to having all the answers given to you on a platter.
Yes, and it's one of those movies where every time I watch it, I appreciate it on a new level. I've seen it 3 times now since it came out last year, and I loved it, and I loved I got to sit down and chat to them both on this podcast and ask them all about some of the story points in this film and inspirations for it and stuff. And it is a really clever. I almost wonder if it's too clever in some ways, this movie. I wonder if it's not to say that it's some people don't get it, but it's almost a little bit alienating at times because it is a movie you have to think about, and it's a movie that leaves you with questions. It's really creepy and interesting, and it's got some great characters and great moments. So yeah, I agree with you. It feels like that movie should be more championed than it is. Definitely. What about the opposite then? What about a movie that was maybe over championed? A movie you didn't get the love for from this year?
I mean, it's not that I didn't get it. I get it, but I didn't get all the love for it when it would be Halloween.
Halloween, yeah.
I mean, I was just generally quite disappointed by it.
Right, yeah. Considering the love, I mean, it became the biggest grossing slasher movie ever, didn't it?
Yeah.
The biggest grossing Halloween movie ever. It broke loads of records. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there was a lot of good things about it. There's a lot of things I enjoyed, but generally I was a bit disappointed with the overwhelmingly positive reaction to it. I was a bit like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Fair enough. I'm going to go with The Meg. The Meg.
I still have not seen The Meg.
Right. Well, don't bother, Anna. This is what I'll say. Right. I don't get it. I'm a little bit. I've got a bit of a blind spot when it comes to these types of movies where they are clearly bad, but people kind of love them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. I'm. This is a really unpopular opinion, but I don't get The Room. I don't get that type of movie watching.
So you don't like schlocky movies?
I don't mind it if they've got at least something to enjoy about them, but movies that are just objectively bad, and The Meg is just a badly made shark movie. It's the fact that it made so much money and created so much hype, and I went to this screening of it and everyone was so excited and there was whoops and cheers, and I was like, what am I missing here? I was like, it's just a really rubbish, quite boring movie for me.
This is why you don't like Riverdale. It's the same concept.
Yes, exactly. I was ready for it to be good, for it to be a decent Jason Statham movie, a decent shark movie.
Do you know what I really want to become the new shark movie? Because there is a whole subgenre. I don't know why people love shark movies.
People love sharks. Yeah.
Go crazy for them.
Yeah.
I want more bear movies.
Yes.
Give me more killer bear movies.
Right. Well, not that you remembered the Annihilation bear, Anna, from this year.
A bear-like creature. But I genuinely hope that The Revenant would kickstart a new fad in bear movies.
Yeah.
Still hasn't happened.
Well, maybe Paddington squashed that. That's the problem. We've got the cutest bear known to man.
The best character ever.
Paddington 2, as we've just talked about on this podcast for some reason, is a perfect movie, right?
It is a perfect movie.
But anyway,
that is a fundamental fact of life.
It is. It's perfect. Okay, let's move on. Favorite. This is obviously a category you've made up this year, basically. Favorite.
Yes, I will trademark this.
Yeah, you trademarked this. This is copyright Anna. Best dance horror of 2018.
God. 2018 was a great year for dance horror.
Yes, it was.
There's so many to pick from.
There are, right?
I'm so excited. I have to go with the Cornerstone classic Climax.
Yes.
Basically, because that is in the most simplistic possible way. It is fundamentally a dance horror. There is nothing to it. There is dance and there's horror. And they're sort of melded together and they're both sort of separated. So the first half is very step up.
Yes.
But, like ultra chic 90s French street dancers version of step up. And the second half is very The Devils.
Yes.
It's like shit just gets real and everyone's sort of high on something. You don't really know what. And everybody's paranoid. Everybody's killing each other.
Yeah.
And running around and they can't really leave. So they're all stuck in the same place. So yeah, that would be it.
Good
Climax.
shout. I've got to agree with you, to be honest. I've got to agree with you.
It's perfect.
It is a perfect movie. If I was to go for another movie that I don't think is perfect, but it has some incredible dance horror moments, it would be Suspiria, obviously. Yes. The movie as a whole isn't as good as Climax, but the best moments in that film are the dance scenes, right? Which we talked about, and the moments that absolutely perfectly merge dance with horror. So that would be my pick.
Hi, my name is Dan Martin. I'm a special effects artist, co-host of the Arrow Video podcast with Sam Ashurst, and occasional guest on the Evolution of Horror. My favourite horror film of 2018 was Overlord, directed by Julius Avery and photographed by the fantastic Laurie Rose. This was a film my co-host Sam took me to go and see a preview of. I knew nothing about it. It absolutely delighted me. It feels like a sort of an 80s straight to VHS, like what the fuck horror fest, but with some serious J.J. Abrams money behind it. It's really tremendous fun. I can't recommend highly enough that you go in as cold as possible. Some of the advertising gimmicks they're running, even like banners they're running on IMDb, if you look up anything about it, like run times, you get confronted with what the cast said about ... and it's spoilers. Just don't. Like it's really fun. Go and have a good fun night out with it. It's sort of a war film. It's definitely a horror film. That's all you need to know.
Okay, we're nearly there. We're on the home stretch. These are the biggies now. We're into basically the horror Oscars, okay? These are the Oscar categories we're going through now. So first of all, best performance in a horror movie this year.
Okay, I'm going to do two.
Yes.
I'm going to do male and female performances.
Very good. Best actor, best actress.
So best actor, again, cheating here a little bit, but let's plug this movie as much as possible for next year. I'm going to go Rory Culkin in Lords of Chaos.
Oh, you
He
again.
floored me.
Yeah.
He is officially my favorite Culkin up until this point was Kieran.
I can't believe you have a favourite Culkin.
I have a favourite Culkin. We could do a whole episode on the Culkins.
Yeah, apparently so.
Oh, maybe that's a whole new podcast.
Yes, it probably is.
So my favourite one up until this point, just for context, was Kieran, because he's amazing in Succession.
Yes.
And in Igby Goes Down and a whole bunch of other things. Anyway, but Rory absolutely dethroned Kieran. He is so good in Lords of Chaos.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah,
he is so charismatic, but really, plays this flawed central character of Euronymous.
Yes.
Who is this sort of megalomaniac, ambitious, but ultimately kind of not a bad dude.
Yeah.
Kind of aspiring mogul where he is a teenager, so he's kind of a nerd.
Yes.
But he pretends he wants to create this mythos around him.
Yeah.
And he, the real life Euronymous kind of pretty much founded Norwegian black metal in the 90s. So he is really impressive in his own right.
Yeah, right.
But I think Rory gave him a lot of humanity in his performance, and you sort of fall in love with him throughout the rest of the film, even though he's not, the greatest person.
No.
But he always plays him as a deeply flawed but ultimately really human.
Yeah, totally.
character.
I think he shows signs of kind of real humanity and sympathy, and there are moments when you're reminded that this is actually actually just this like 19-year-old kid, you know, like suddenly he seems very young and childlike almost, you know. Yeah, I agree, it's amazing. And what about Best Actress then?
I mean, there's only one.
There's obviously
There's
only one.
Don't you swear at me, you little shit! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! Do you understand? All I do is worry and slave and defend you, and all I get back is that fucking face on your face! So full of disdain and resentment and always so annoyed. If you could have just said, I'm sorry, or faced up to what happened, maybe then we could do something with this, but you can't take responsibility for anything! So now I can't accept, and I can't forgive, because nobody admits anything they've done!
Miss Toni Collette in Hereditary blew my mind away.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, if she doesn't get nominated for everything, and I know she won't.
No.
Yeah, but she's just... I have no words.
Yeah, no,
for her performance in Hereditary.
It's stunning. It's like in some ways it is the movie. Really, it is like her performance is what makes that movie so incredible. I agree. For me, if I was going to choose two, I would say Toni Collette, Best Actress, Best Actor, and I'm going to plug a movie made by one of my co-hosts, film journalist and filmmaker Sam Ashurst, and he made a movie called Frankenstein's Creature this year that premiered at Fright Fest, and it's brilliant, and it's an adaptation of Frankenstein that basically was written and performed by James Swanton, who basically kind of he originally sort of wrote it, I believe, as a one-man show, and I think it was on in theatres, and then Sam's adapted it into a film. And this performance, like the whole film is like a single take, basically, like one shot of this actor telling this story as Frankenstein's creature, and it's phenomenal. Like, he is like completely magnetic, because for a movie that is a single take, a single person, there's a risk there that movie could become quite stale quite quickly. But I think because of the way Sam's directed it and shot it, and also this like magnetic performance, it's really engaging. And he like, it's a different kind of Frankenstein's creature to the one we know from kind of, Boris Karloff and all of that kind of thing. And he gives it kind of pathos, but also is very creepy. That is the film Frankenstein's Creature. The performance, one of my favourite of the year, is James Swanton. Sam Ashurst's brilliant film will actually be available on DVD in 2019. Hex are going to be distributing it. There's going to be a run of, I think, 200 sort of collector's edition DVDs. That's because the film was actually shot on the 200th anniversary of Frankenstein. And that one's going to feature audio commentaries and short films and loads of other exciting bonus content, so do keep an eye out for that. That is Frankenstein's Creature. I would thoroughly recommend it.
Hello, I am Sam Ashurst. I am the director of Frankenstein's Creature, the greatest film of 2018, and I have also been an occasional guest on the Evolution of Horror this year, which I have loved. My favourite horror film of 2018 is a film that I know the host of this podcast doesn't particularly like, but I love, Mandy. Mandy is horrific in all the best ways. It is looking grief in the face, and the grief is staring back at you with very sad, dead eyes. I thought it was a truly beautiful, profoundly moving film. Saw it a couple of times, and the second time was with a big audience, and they were all laughing, and I hated every single one of them, because this is not a comedy. This is a tragedy. Beautifully shot, beautifully performed, beautifully scored, and occasionally quite gruesome. Mandy, I love you. And see you next year. Evolution of Horror.
Okay, best cinematography, most beautiful looking horror movie of 2018. What would you award?
I'm gonna go with Climax.
Yeah,
because I mean, you've mentioned it a couple of times, but Gaspar Noé has such a distinct visual style, and it's dizzying and over the top and very intense, but it's so him.
Yes.
And I think Climax is his tightest film.
Yeah, agreed.
In every single kind of possible sense, and visually as well. I think a lot of it's kind of like typical shots, like the very no-way shots are there.
The upside down ones.
The upside down ones, like, the creepy sort of neon lit corridors, the tracking shots, the tilted shots. It's all there.
Always moving.
Yeah. It's very... But it's a very seductive. It's kind of seductive type of visual storytelling that he's developed, and I think it just works to a T with climax.
Yes, I agree.
And basically, because he is shooting a horror movie, but it's also a dance movie, dance horror, trademarked by me.
Yeah.
It functions so beautifully, and the way that he films. And I actually interviewed him about this, and the way that he films flesh and bodies is so uniquely his.
Yeah.
And it's so kind of different from the way bodies are usually filmed in horror films.
Yes.
Where, because they're all sort of, all the protagonists are mostly amateur actors. I think Sophia Boutella is the only one who's sort of a professional actress now. That makes their physicality kind of really interesting, and the way that then they get destroyed and ripped apart is also oddly beautiful.
Yes.
Because of the way that they've been shot and filmed, and the way that the action and gore scenes are also shot and filmed in Climax. So that would be my choice.
I agree. Amazing. That's a good choice. And I'm going to go with a film. I feel like these two films cross over a lot in our categories, but I'm going with Mandy. So I didn't absolutely love Mandy as a movie, but I think it is the most stunningly beautiful horror movie I've seen this year. Just like you mentioned earlier, that it's kind of psychedelic and sumptuous, and it's so visual, and it's much more concerned with visuals than it is with plot, I think, to be honest. And the moments for me where it got a bit eye-rolly were in the second half, with Nick Cage being Nick Cage and chainsaw fights and tigers and stuff, which I was less keen on. But actually that first half, when you're just watching him and Andrea Riseborough together as a couple, and the music, it's Johan Johansson, isn't it? Music coming in with the visuals. I just found it absolutely hypnotic and stunning, and the kind of I always picture it in my head as being very kind of red.
It's very pink and red, which is my favorite combination.
Red. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think again, more than the rest of it, more than the story or anything else, I'm going to remember the visuals from Mandy. I'm always going to remember certain shots. There's a scene where somebody is set on fire, which was again, really disturbing but stunningly beautiful, and forests and skies and cars driving and motorbikes, and I'm going to remember the visuals of that film over any other elements. So I thought I'll be positive about Mandy and give it that. Okay, best script, best writing, best screenplay. What would you give that award?
I mentioned it briefly before. I'm going to go with Upgrade.
Ooh, okay. Good one. Good choice, yeah.
What if I told you I could offer you something that would enable you to walk again? I call it STEM. A computer chip that has the potential to change everything. It's a new, better brain.
I am STEM, the system operating your body for you. Can anybody?
To give all credit to Lee Whannell, obviously he's a really experienced, really, really, really talented screenwriter. But I think Upgrade there's so much visual storytelling in it as well. It's really tight, it's really fun, and it does take, I think, a lot of talent to elevate a very kind of simplistic B-movie concept to making something legitimately good, respectable, and really fun and enjoyable as well.
Yeah, totally. And the dialogue is great because there's so much of him communicating with the person in his head, basically. That's quite a big chunk of the movie, and you have to believe that and buy into these two people playing off each other the whole time, basically, don't you, to kind of be invested.
Exactly.
Yeah, I will go for a film we've already briefly mentioned. I'll go for The Endless again. I just think, because again, like we talked about, that movie the script is so dense. I feel like every line in it means something, or means 2 or 3 different things, and it works on the surface as these really clever character beats about these two brothers and all the stuff that goes on in their past, but then also it's kind of building mythology and building these worlds and making references possibly to Resolution, but you don't have to know Resolution to get it. I think there's just layers upon layers in that script.
I used to make a lot of your clothes, you remember that?
They're all in their 40s. They just look young. It's weird. Why come back now? The video you sent. What video?
Best director.
Oh, gonna have to say Ari Aster here.
Yeah, me too.
Just
I'm going with the same.
So good.
Yeah.
God damn it! Like Hereditary being a directorial debut, I just find offensive.
I know, right? It is
so
offensive.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so beautifully, elegantly directed.
Yeah.
Everything is so thought out, and if you've seen the film more than once, I loved watching it a second and a third time because you really appreciate his direction, the way that there's so much information in the visuals, the way that every single shot, everything makes sense. It's so coherent, and having watched his previous shorts as well, there is definitely a very stylistic, very clear voice as well behind it.
Interesting. Yeah.
So yes, I definitely encourage to check out Hereditary, but also his previous shorts, particularly a very long short he did, I think directly before he made Hereditary, called There's Something Wrong with the Johnsons, or Catching Up with the Johnsons,
yes.
which dabbles in a lot of the same family drama and family dynamics that he then further explores in Hereditary as well.
Amazing.
So,
amazing.
Yeah, Ari, absolute genius.
I won't add anything to that. I'm right there with you. I would go with... actually, if I could name a slight cheat answer as well, I would go with Mike Flanagan for the Haunting of Hill House as well, because, if you want to talk about an incredible direction, 10 hours of pure horror there. That was pretty good. Okay, and speaking of, let's talk about our best favourite TV show. Favourite TV show, horror TV show of 2018. You're going to say something that's going to make me angry, I bet, aren't you?
Well, I'm going to cheat and say 2.
Yeah, go
on. So one of them will be Channel Zero, which is an amazing, very little known horror anthology show created by Nick and Tosca. And it's sort of every season is entirely self-contained, and they're all sort of based on creepypastas, which are sort of online horror stories that are born and circulated on the internet. And they're in 2018 they were in a 3rd season called The Dream Door, which I actually haven't seen, but I've seen the previous 2 seasons, and it is just excellent. And every single season is directed by a single director, and the director changes for every season. So it's definitely, as a whole, a show I would encourage everyone to check out.
It's great.
But then I would have to say American Horror Story Apocalypse.
Oh, God.
I'm just a mega fan. I will lap up anything Ryan Murphy throws my way.
Yes, we were just talking about Nip Tuck before this started. Brilliant. I mean, he is king of camp, Ryan Murphy.
And also, if anyone is an AHS mega fan like I am, this was a particularly interesting season because it was the first crossover. They had done crossover moments before.
Yes.
But this is a direct crossover between season 1, Murder House, and season 3, Coven.
Yes.
And it was just, it's, as all American Horror Story shows and as all Ryan Murphy shows, it's patchy.
Yes.
It's very patchy.
Yes.
But it has one of the best American Horror Stories episodes, I think, ever.
Okay.
Which is Return to Murder House. I think it's episode either 3 or 6, I can't remember. And it's just beautiful and camp and over the top, and it has so much bitchiness and shade, and it's so violent, and there's witches and warlocks.
Brilliant.
And ghosts and zombies and sort of like pretentious LA douchebags.
Love it.
It's got everything, and it incorporates Cody Fern, who's an amazing new kind of Australian actor who shot to prominence because he was one of the supporting actors in Ryan Murphy's American Crime Story Versace.
Yes.
And he's now fully in the Ryan Murphy universe.
Yes.
And he plays the Antichrist.
Brilliant. Okay.
It's really good fun.
I will check it out at some point, I will. But I did watch the whole of the Trump series last year, which, again, patchy. But
very patchy.
But also had some really, really good stuff as well. And I think Sarah Paulson is what saves that show every year.
I mean, if you don't like Evan Peters, then you watch Cold.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, Evan Peters is good as well. But yeah, Sarah Paulson is the thing that keeps me coming back for that show. I will watch it at some point, definitely. For me, it's no big surprise. Obviously, Haunting of Hill House is like an absolute horror masterpiece. In fact, I would put it... We're going to reveal our best film in a minute. I would put it like alongside for me, the best film. Like, it's that quality. Cool. And in some ways, I think is more impressive because it sustains the pacing and the suspense of a horror movie across 10 hours. And for me personally, I know a lot of people don't like it all the way through, and some people say it kind of sags at the end. It does a little bit, but I would say as a whole, it's not really patchy, and it is like, it starts as like a 9 or 10 and it just stays that for me all the way through, which I think is quite impressive, because I think, sometimes horror TV shows struggle to kind of keep that pacing or keep that suspense, or, how you sustain that kind of fear across a whole series. So yeah, Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Hill House. If anyone hasn't seen it, please check it out. It's on Netflix. Okay, and that leaves us then to the best film. I mean, it's not going to be a great surprise. I'm sure people may have guessed. What's your best horror film of 2018?
There's just one. It's always Hereditary.
It is Hereditary. It is for me as well. It was funny though, because I was thinking, in our effort to try and avoid talking about Hereditary too much, I think we've mentioned Climax way more than we have Hereditary. People would probably think our favourite would be Climax, but I'm right there with you. It would be Hereditary. No movie has just scared me in that kind of uncanny way as Hereditary.
So the first time that I watched Hereditary, I think I mentioned this, I spent the first hour and a half clutching my face. Just, I've never been so surprised and shocked and kind of delightfully shocked by a movie. Not knowing where something is going to go is terribly exciting, and especially with genre films as well. And then I think we talked about this on the Hereditary episode as well. After I saw it, I had to just listen to a lot of very, very bad pop music for the next hour, just
I love
to
that.
calm myself down, because it was so insidious and so insane. And we spoke about it, and I interviewed Ari, and he wrote about it, and I still cannot get that film out of my head.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's what's brilliant about it is it's one of those movies that is not. It wasn't a fun horror movie. Like, I remember coming out of it, like you said, you come out of it and you feel wrung out. Like, I came out of it with my friend and we both kind of went to the pub, and usually we go watch loads of horror films together and we'd be like, oh, this was great and this was great. And we both just sat there a bit like, I don't really know what to say. Like, we're both just kind of a bit like in shock, I think, at that movie, because it like wallops you around the face in the first act, and then it just keeps doing that all the way through to the end. And I just remember that feeling of just having no idea what this movie was that I was watching. Like, you're watching something completely new, even though it pulls on tropes from classic horror, but it does it in such a way that is like, what the fuck is this,
And it's so endlessly rewatchable as well. Like, I really have enjoyed every single screening of it since the first time. It just does not get tired, because it's so deeply layered. And I think it's fundamentally not just a very, very good horror film and a very scary one, but also it's a really good film in general. It's the sort of film that if somebody did not enjoy genre in general, I would recommend for them to watch this, because there's so many very human themes. And
I agree.
And it's fundamentally a family drama.
It is. I think the only thing that would put people off from that regard is the ending. It's like the last 10 minutes, But I agree. Other than that, it is absolutely a family drama. And it's what I love about The Haunting of Hill House as well. It's like, first and foremost, this is a family drama, but with horror sort of littered in. And I think sometimes that way round works, It's amazing. And I was going to say, I think it's not just a brilliant horror film, it is a brilliant film, and I think it's probably my top film of the year anyway, regardless of horror,
I would agree. It would definitely be my top 10 of the year.
Yeah. The only other thing I was going to ask is scariest movie of the year, but is that the same thing?
It is the same
thing.
It is the same thing.
We'll move on. Let's do... let's go negative, just briefly. Let's go negative. We don't usually go negative on this podcast, but I've got to ask you. Yeah, you don't. I don't. What is your worst horror movie you've seen in 2018?
I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to say it's going to have to be Slender Man.
Is it? Yeah.
Those who hear the 3 bells toll accept his invitation. When you hear the first, you must close your eyes. Katie! Opening your eyes only once you've heard the third.
I'm so fascinated by the mythology and the phenomenon of Slender Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of promise there.
Such wasted promise.
Yes.
Honestly, just every single digital copy of this movie deserves to be burned, put in the trash. Everybody involved should just change their names. What the fuck is this movie? Who is it for? What is it servicing? Why is it not scary? Why is it boring? Why has it completely ignored the mythos of Slenderman to make it into something boring when it isn't?
Yeah.
So instead of watching Slenderman, I would recommend to watch 2 documentaries about the phenomenon of Slenderman. One of them is called
Beware the Slender Man.
Beware the Slender Man, which is about the real life true crime case of 2 girls who tried to murder their classmate, inspired or, being commanded by Slenderman. And the other documentary that I would recommend would be, which is completely freely available on YouTube right now. It's called A Self-Induced Hallucination by Dan Schobrun, and it's made entirely from footage online, from archive footage that he's found online, which involves a lot of the kind of the online creepiness surrounding the figure of Slenderman as well, and the sort of the trends and stuff that people were coming up with in response to the idea of Slenderman kind of possessing or chasing them.
Yeah, okay.
So I find both of those really interesting in really different ways.
Nice. Okay.
What about you? What's the worst horror film you've seen all year?
Yeah, it would be. I'm going to go just to choose something different. I would go The Nun. I think maybe it was expectations as well, because I think I knew that Slender Man was getting all this bad press when I saw it, and I it was bad, but I was not quite as kind of deflated and angry as I was by The Nun.
We need to pray now. And whatever happens, whatever you may see or hear, keep your eyes forward and don't stop praying.
I think it's the squandered potential of it. Like, The Nun could have been scary. I'm not the biggest fan of The Conjuring Part 2, but I liked the moment when we saw The Nun, and I was like, that's creepy, and I get why they're making a movie of this. Corin Hardy, who directed The Hallow, was attached to direct it. What's her name from American Horror Story? Tessa Farmiga, starring in it. And the trailers look kind of creepy, and it was this period set in a convent in Eastern Europe, and I thought there's so much potential here. Like, how do you not make this scary? Like, nuns are scary, convents are scary, these dark old buildings are scary, the trailers look promising, and it was the most bland, predictable, unscary, just boring, badly written, badly directed movie. And yeah, it was just, I don't know what happened. It was like,
it was disappointing for sure, because it had a great premise, like you say. Nuns are scary. That's the entire concept of it. Yeah. But I think for me, The Nun was really disappointing as well. But for me, it was just like, I don't understand the unnecessary digging into the backstory of a great supporting character.
Yes, right.
Just give me another Conjuring.
And it sums up the problem with so much cinema these days, is that's what we get. And that's the problem, though, is that even if we get another Conjuring now, it feels like that's what those movies do, is that they're going to set up. It's like we also got the Crooked Man in Conjuring 2, and Annabelle, and all these things where it's like, all they're going to do now is set up franchises and set up other movies, which is a shame, because Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as the Warrens. It's quite a cool concept, and it's like that in itself could be quite a fun series. But yeah, hated The Nun, even though it was my favourite jump scare of the year. But that was just the Nun trailer. So there you go. We've gone through so much there. Anything that we haven't mentioned at all that you thought was worth mentioning?
I thought it was really interesting that we never once mentioned Ghost Stories.
Yeah, Ghost Stories.
Which was really enjoyable.
Really solid, definitely.
Really solid screenwriting, really enjoyable. I think it's on Amazon Prime now.
Is it? Great.
I think.
I will watch it again. I really loved it. I mean, it would be one of my, top 10 horror movies of the year. It just, for some reason, didn't stick out for me in any of those particular categories as some other movies. And then I want to quickly ask you, I've got a really exciting looking list here of horror movies that are being released in 2019, right? Ooh. And there is so much. I was getting excited just making this list, right? So there are a few that we've already discussed that we've seen that we would recommend that are coming out. So Lords of Chaos, In Fabric, there's a possibility, we don't know, that Knife Plus Heart or Tigers Are Not Afraid at some point might see the light of day in 2019. If so, check them out. But there are some other movies, right? The new Babak Anvari movie, Wounds, starring Dakota Johnson and Armie Hammer, right?
Kind of fucking way.
How exciting is that? That's just been announced. That's premiering at Sundance in 2019. So Babak Anvari, who directed Under the Shadow, it's his second follow-up movie.
One of the best horror debuts as well.
Incredible. Other kind of amazing directors like that are coming back with new films. We've got Jordan Peele's new horror movie, Us, starring Elizabeth Moss and Lupita Nyong'o. Yeah, I mean, can't wait.
Cannot wait.
Cannot
Have you
wait.
got Jennifer Kent's?
Jennifer Kent's The Nightingale, right? Australian period film that follows a young convict woman seeking revenge for a terrible act of violence.
I will
Can't
watch
wait.
anything Jennifer Kent's put out.
I just can't wait. I can't wait. We've got the new Robert Eggers movie, The Lighthouse. Set in 1890, shot on black and white 35mm film, starring Robert Pattinson. I'm so excited.
I am so there.
So you've got you've got Robert Eggers, you've got Jennifer Kent. Ari Aster's new movie, Midsummer, is coming straight out this year, which he's described as a dark breakup movie that becomes a horror movie.
Love it.
Same sort of similar lines.
And I don't know if it's actually coming out in 2019. I hope it, because it was on a festival circuit this year. But Nicholas Pesky's Piercing,
yes,
is a really interesting film.
Yes,
we haven't mentioned it at all because it's not really out.
No, but what I've got on my list here that is coming out in 2019 is Grudge, directed by Nicholas Pesky. So again, I think Piercing, maybe it's just not mainstream enough to get a release or something, but this is also the bloke who directed Eyes of My Mother, if anyone saw that. One of the most
gorgeous
but disturbing, upsetting but brilliantly so movies I've ever seen. He is directing, I don't know how I feel about this, another Grudge remake.
He could do better,
and it is, I looked up the synopsis. It is The Grudge. It is The Grudge that we've all seen a million times before.
We don't need another remake.
But directed by him, that's promising. Starring Andrea Riseborough, Lynn Shay, John Cho, and Jackie Weaver.
Okay, I'm so into that. I will watch anything with John Cho.
Yeah.
Searching. It's not a horror movie, but it's a great thriller.
Great film.
But also, I'm really interested in Andrea Riseborough becoming a sort of very intriguing genre queen.
I know, right?
I'm into it.
So that, because I was going to say, so we had these original, interesting new director movies coming out that are all very exciting. Then we've got a few well-known properties coming out. There's It, Chapter 2, we're getting this year. Jessica Chastain and James McAvoy.
James Van Zoon.
Yeah.
And a bunch of kind of other lesser known actors playing the rest of the kids growing up. Oh my God.
Incredible. We've got another Stephen King adaptation, In the Tall Grass, which is the novella by Stephen King and his son Joe Hill, and it's starring Patrick Wilson. That's coming out in 2019.
And there's a remake of Pet Sematary coming out next year as well.
Pet Sematary also coming out this year as well. A few sequels. We're getting World War Z 2, which I wouldn't be excited for, except that it's David Fincher is directing it, and it's written by Max Brooks, who wrote the original book, who was in no way involved in the original, who is now involved in this second one.
I'm suspicious of this.
Yeah, I know, right? But surely it might be better than the first one. It might.
I'm really excited for season 2 of Castle Rock. That's a TV property we haven't mentioned. Weirdly enough,
I haven't seen that yet. Yeah,
it is an entire. It's like a collage of Stephen King references and properties.
Yes.
And I'm also really interested in Bill Skarsgård becoming like an interesting new genre dude.
Yeah.
Because obviously he plays Pennywise in the new It, and he also plays the kid in Castle Rock. And he's a very intriguing performer, the way he plays with horror. And he, what was he in as well?
He was in Assassination Nation, wasn't he?
He was in Assassination Nation as well. He was also played as sort of an Upir, which is a sort of a Slavic version of a vampire in one of Netflix's first original series, Hemlock Grove.
Yes.
Which I don't think many people saw. I mean, it's schlocky as hell, but I really enjoyed it because it's like a weird, darker version of the central romance of Twilight, which is we've got a vampire and a werewolf, and there's a girl in the middle. Who's it gonna be? It's really schlocky, but
Brilliant.
I loved it.
Amazing. A couple of other sequels, Zombieland 2. I mean, I feel like that's a bit.
Do they have Jesse Eisenberg and Woody Harrelson?
I don't know about Jesse Eisenberg. It's definitely got Woody Harrelson in it again. it feels like a bit late for that. I feel like the craze has died down
also,
a bit for that.
If Jesse and Emma Stone and Abigail Breslin is not coming back, I don't see the point of that.
I know, it's a bit sad. Happy Death Day 2 is coming out. People loved it. Happy Death Day. That's being embraced. 47 Meters Down 2, another shark movie, and we've got, crucially, the new M. Night Shyamalan film Glass coming out in January. Yes. So the kind of sequel to Split and Unbreakable. You've got Sarah Paulson, Samuel L. Jackson, James McAvoy, and Bruce Willis.
What did you think of the trailer for that?
I loved it.
I know, me too.
I loved it. I am an absolute unashamed fan of M. Night Shyamalan.
I'm
got to say.
Shyamalan apologist.
Me too. I really am. I know he had a bad patch in the middle there, but
he had a terrible patch, but he's really come through with some really, really solid horror gems in the last couple of years.
Yes, since he's gone Blumhouse again. He's The Visit.
I love
great.
The Visit. I loved Split.
Yep. Agreed. And his original stuff is brilliant. I mean, I'm always a bit baffled when people sort of say that Unbreakable and Signs weren't good, because they were masterpieces. Like, I loved all of those early ones up until about The Village is where it started to go downhill for me. But yeah,
we shall not speak of that period.
We won't speak of the what happened next. But yeah, Glass. Hopefully, it looked good from the trailer, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you had to pick one of all those films we just discussed, which one you're most excited about?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna have to say, between It Chapter 2 and Us, the new Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
Those are my most... I really want to see the new Robert Eggers. Really want to see the new Jennifer Kent, new Babak Mvari. But honestly, I'm going to freak the fuck out watching It Chapter 2.
Did you love It Chapter 1?
I have a really soft spot for all Stephen King properties. I'm a mega fan. And the original It miniseries from 1990 was such a huge thing for me.
Me too. Massive.
And I really liked the first one.
Yeah.
I think it's just by the nature of how they've divided the story, it is the childish part of it. It's very focused on the children.
Yes.
So I think I'm really looking forward to the adult
I agree.
Side of it.
Yeah.
And the quality of the performers that they've got for this part is just astounding. So I cannot wait for it.
No, me neither. And I did really enjoy the first one. I wish it had been a bit scarier, but maybe it was, like you say, it played more on that child element of it. I actually liked, which is weird, but I liked the scenes of that were more like Stand By Me, like kid drama, than the horror.
Yes.
I was a bit disappointed in the horror, to be honest.
So
and I wanted more from the horror. So
absolutely. So very, very similarly, that's why I'm really looking forward to Chapter 2, because I think it's going to be a lot more adult horror, which might be scarier for us.
Yeah.
But I can imagine that if I watched It Chapter 1 as a kid, I would have been fucking terrified.
Oh, undoubtedly. Especially that opening scene with Georgie and the way they updated that scene for the film. It was really gruesome. Yeah. I'm with you. I think for me, it is the Robert Eggers. It's the black and white 35mm Lighthouse movie that I'm like, I cannot fucking wait for that. But yeah, some amazing ones coming up. Anna, thank you so much for that. We've been going for an hour and 50 minutes. That's amazing. We've done a lot of chat there. If people want to come find you, Anna, online and whatever you do, podcasts and everything else, where can they find you?
So I am on Twitter on Anna B Demented. I also co-host the BFI podcast, which you have been on, talking about Halloween, and I also co-run the Final Girls, and we will be back in February, touring our We're the Weirdos shorts program up and down the country.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And there we have it. Thank you very much for listening, and a big thank you to my wonderful guest, Anna Bogutskaya. That was really fun. So many incredible movies to discuss. So please do get in touch with your choices. What are your favourite movies of 2018? Send me your top 10 lists or send me your personal highlights. I'd love to hear from you. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Letterboxd, and there is also a Facebook discussion group in which you can discuss the podcast, horror movies, or whatever you like with fellow listeners. That's the Evolution of Horror discussion group, and that can be found on Facebook. And that's it for now. Have a fantastic new year, and join us again very soon for all of this and more on the Evolution of Horror.